Hi there, and a very warm welcome to this week's quick tip. And this week I'm trying to honor it again. So after last week and the week before have been really long technical ones, this one is technical, but hopefully very short, as we are talking about normals. So the mesh normals that make up your surface. And actually this got inspired by Neon Gold, who asked some questions. So I got the idea to make this tutorial to let you know or let you in on the normal topic and how to make your surfaces look stellar. So let's keep going to the next chapter and see what we are actually talking about. Some of you are probably like, what is he even talking about? I'm talking about the surface appearance in connection to the mesh flow. For example, on this beveled cube, you have the appearance of the main face here rounded, so spherical-like, while it is completely flat. If we go to mesh mode, there's no extra bevels here. Also, if you do product visualization, you probably run into this before, so you get artifacts on your imported CAD meshes here. This is a model of Galliami campus downloaded from GrabCAD, and you can see there's a lot of artifacts inside of the mesh here. And we are going to take a look how to understand them, why they are there, and of course how to mitigate them so you have clean surfaces. I think to get the most of the topic, let's talk about normals first. So let's create a very simple object like a polygon and turn it into an editable mesh by hitting C. To show you the next part, I need to go into polygon mode and select the main polygon here. In Cinema 4D, there are options to make those set normals visible. So go to Option and then to Polygon Normal. And you can see in the middle of the polygon, there's a line now. And not only that, if we go to Options again and go to Vertex Normals, then each point of the polygon also gets a line. So what are those lines? Unsurprisingly, those lines are our normals, and they're basically direction vectors that point away from the surface in a perpendicular manner. If you want to call it like this, they're pointing away from the surface as much as they can. There are a lot of other use cases for normals, but since we are interested in the surface properties and the shading, we are talking about them in regards to that. So you shouldn't be surprised when I tell you that those normals are directly influencing the shading, as they're telling the camera rays the surface orientation at each direct hit point. Since of course we have a hit point at every pixel and not just the vertices where we store our normals, those are weighted accordingly. Let me explain. So if we have a hit point right here, then a weighted average of each of the surrounding normals is taken. For our example, this would be this, and this. And since the normal here is closest, the influence of this normal will be the highest on this point. To demonstrate this a little bit better, what I want to do is cut down the middle of the polygon here. So let's cut this there, and you can see that our normals are suddenly gone. And this is a Cinema 4D thing. So whenever I'm in poly mode and have my polygons selected, then the normals will pop up. If I go into other modes, like the line mode here, there's no normals here. And I don't know why this is, but this is the way it is. So what I just did here is make the surface slightly uneven to show you the interpolation of the normals. So what we also want to do is add a material to our surface so we can see that in the reflection a little bit better. Let's actually go here and make the surface color a little bit darker, so 50% for example. And let's select our polygons again to see our normals once more. Here we go. So if you pay attention to those normals, you can see that the middle normal here is an average between those both. Now the average is exactly pointing upwards here, but if we go outside and deselect the polygon, you can also see that this is reflected in the reflections. They are not having a crease here. It is an average trying to build a round shape basically. To have control whether this is interpolated or not, let me introduce you to the Phong Tag. The Phong Tag has an angle threshold, so if it's smaller than the angle threshold, then it will be interpolated. If it's larger than the angle threshold, then it will be broken up. So this angle is about 14 degrees. So if I go to 13 degrees, then you can see the angle is actually broken up here. Let's go back into poly mode to see what's happening to the normals. And you can see that actually now we have at this angle two normals, one for this side and one for the other side. That can be even more normals depending on the surface connected to this vertex. Small side note here, so even though if you have a higher threshold, so let's go up to 45 again, you can actually break this edge here by force. So if we select this edge and then right click, you can say break Phong shading, and this will be respected as the break now, even though if the angle is higher. And you can turn on and off this effect by the tag here. As you know me, I like to have realistic shading, and nothing in reality is as sharp as a broken edge. So what I like to apply is other methods to make the edge slightly more, well, blunt, but not as interpolated as we had before. Let's go back and get the edge selected and actually undo the Phong Break selection. So we are going to the unbreak Phong shading here. So we have our old behavior back. To get there, what I actually want to do is bevel this edge and therefore get supporting edges in here to interpolate between. So let's do this by hitting MS and then bevel. Let's bring this up a little bit. Here we go. And what we have here is now something we need to pay attention as well. So you can see there's Phong Break rounding here, and this will break the edges here also. And this is something we don't like. So let's go back and do another round of beveling, but this time we untick this and we go for a solid bevel. Here we go. So what we have now is we have changed the interpolation here. So let's go to poly mode between these two edges here instead of between these two. So the interpolation is now much narrower and caged between those supporting edges here, and therefore we created our interpolation in between a smaller range. I think you get the idea of this whole shebang now, so let's go back to our cube. Now, welcome back to our cube scene. I bet you now understand the problem at hand much better. So if we go to a side view, you can see that the normals are basically looking outward a little bit. So in between those edges, the interpolation is slightly rounded. To mitigate that, what we would do is bring in more edges. So if we loop cut around those, the interpolation is basically limited between those both and does not go ahead over the whole surface. Obviously, we have to do that at every edge, but if we do, let's roughly eyeball it and then go out of poly mode and then also get out of mesh mode, you can see we get a rather nice shading here, even though we don't have a lot of polys at hand. If you've been paying attention, you might have heard me saying this is the old method. This is because there's a new or a different method here. So let's get rid of our supporting edges so we end up with our old cube. And then go to the Phong Tag here and have a look at the style section. If we roll that out, you can see there's more methods to weight our normals. For example, area weighted takes into account the size of the polygon. So when we go back here, let's actually select our polygons and go into another view so we can see the former interpolation here. And now if we go to area weighted, you can see the larger size of the top polygon actually makes the weight of the normal have a larger influence, and therefore those are more upright. Let's see the difference in the other view here. So let's go and get into perspective again. Deselect the cube so we can see the shading better, and then go from uniform weighted, where the whole thing appears rounded, to, for example, area weighted, where this is much closer to what we wanted in the first place. Before we are looking at CAD models, let's have a last look at styles. So basically, the further you go down that list, the more the interpolation is towards the size of the polygon. So for example, we have area weighted right now, but if we go to square area weighted, you can see the polygon becoming a little bit more flat and therefore even more in the way we want it to be. As the difference is becoming greater, the interpolation also is becoming harder. So you can see we are about to form a very hard edge here, which is not what you want actually. So basically the supporting edge method is still the best one. This is just a good substitute for getting quick and rather good results. Actually, the next point is a really good segue to our CAD data portion, as we need to have a way to store normals. Let's say you want to go back to an older Cinema 4D version where this area weighted option is not available. So you need to store the exact alignment of your normals, which is possible with the normal tag. So if we create a normal tag and then actually go back to uniform, you can see it doesn't change the normals because they are now stored within the tag here. Once we have this tag, we can go to any older Cinema 4D version without fearing to lose this effect that we've set here. And this is also an important point with CAD data, which we are going to look at next. Hold on a second, I set everything normal, so I cram in every bit of information I can. So let's go to the edge mode and actually bevel MS, and then go with the 10 bevel and actually add in some subdivisions here. Let's add 3. And then go to the side view again. So this is our old problem. So the edge here are not parallel, so we get into shading errors. Now what you can also do is go to the depth slider here and increase that beyond 100. So you gain parallel edges. Now this is different for every distance and subdivision, so you have to mix and match. But if you get it close, then go back to our normal view here and deselect. You can see now our edge is looking quite nicely. Of course, nothing is ever perfect, so we are getting problems with this edge here, but I wanted to just mention that. Alright, now on to the CAD models. Welcome to our imported cut mesh. So let's have a look at some of the irregularities here or artifacts. So on this text here, for example, we have those artifacts. And if we go into mesh mode and look closely, this is exactly the same cause. So we have irregular distances between polygons and therefore interpolation errors. As you can see here, and as you know, cut meshes are not known for their superior edge flow. So even though we have the option, so let's go outside of the mesh mode and let's go and get the Phong Tag. And if we go to area weighted, this gets it a little bit better, but it doesn't help all too much. So we actually have to have another method to get the data in for our normals in order to get them looking right. And we can actually take advantage of CAD data since this is a mathematically perfect defined model. It's just translated into a mesh when we import it. So what we can do is take advantage of the mathematical description of the surfaces and actually get our normals from this perfect description. So basically, this is just one option when you import CAD meshes. So let me show you. Small chart time interlude here to bring home the point of CAD meshes and their data. What I'm trying to say here is that CAD data is basically analogous to vector data. So all the proportions of the object and the shapes are mathematically defined, such as this curve here. When we bring that into our modeler, for example Cinema 4D, this is then tessellated. So it cannot hold the mathematically perfect shape, but we need to transfer it to polygons. And as we have talked to an extent before, those polygons have normals that are not ideal, because those normals depend on the neighboring polygons and therefore they oriented themselves like what we experienced before with the cube. But what we can do with CAD data is take the original CAD data and extract the normal position from there, move it to the original point. So we give the points a little bit more precision of the original CAD data, so to speak. And this can be done with normal tags, as we mentioned before. So let's go back and have a look at this in practice. Alright, back into Cinema 4D, let's actually import our CAD data one more time by dragging the step file in here. And you can see that we have this geometry portion here. in which we can set different ways how to handle normals. And one of those is actually the normal tag. And yes, it's as easy as that. If we wait for a couple of seconds for the import, we have a perfect mesh. Basically, we have a perfect surface. The mesh is still looking as it was before. Unfortunately, it's not all sunshine and rainbows, so if you want to model something yourself, if we go to mesh mode here and select the object, and then, for example, select some type here, some polygons, and then extrude them out, you can see that those surfaces are looking rather strange. And this is because we added new points to our vertex selection, so this one here, and therefore they don't know where to belong and where to look at, so to speak. And if we go to mesh mode again, you can see this destroys our newly created faces. So unfortunately, no tweaking inside of Cinema 4D afterwards you have imported the mesh, but there are workarounds as well for something like that. Welcome to Moi time. If you have the Black Friday deal of Octane Render, Moi is already included, so you can use that to do your tweaks of your CAD model. So basically this is one of the workarounds. Usually I use Fusion 360, but I thought since this is included in Octane, I will show it here. Also, what we want to do is going and fillet some of these edges. So beveling and filleting, it's just two different terms for the same thing. So when we hit that, we can select the whole object, then hit fillet, then radius 0.1. I did this before, so since it's in there already. Now we have successfully filleted our text here. So once that's done, we can go back and save that. So let's save this as rounded. Here we go, save. And then what we can do next is reimport that into Cinema 4D. Alright, last time for this tutorial inside of Cinema 4D, let's actually drag in our newly created step file here. Make sure the geometry is on normal tag. Yes, it is. Wait a couple of seconds till it comes in. And then gaze at the nicely beveled rounded corner here. To be honest, I've taken a part of the object that is rather simple to bevel. Some other parts of the object are more laborious. So sometimes you need to select all the edges before you can bevel, as some other edges won't bevel at all. So if you want to do that, definitely plan in some time to get your edges rounded. An alternative for that might be the rounded edges shader in some of the renderers, including Redshift or Octane. And this is it. This is all I wanted to show you for today. It again turned out longer than anticipated. But hopefully you like the presentation and like the new stuff you hopefully learned. If you liked this video, maybe the retro-reflective cone tutorial is something for you, as we are bending normals not via the mesh, but via shaders in this one. Also, if you have any suggestions for future video, let me know by writing it in the comments down below. Also, thanks a lot for the people who made this tutorial possible, which are my Patreons, such as my €50 tier subscribers, Gilles Augustinen and Leon Studio TV. Thank you so very much. Also, a huge thanks for my €15 tier subscribers, AB Studio, Alessio De Vecchi, Alex Wilson, Bavana, BVR, Christian Grajewski, Computer Generated, Etienne Schmidt, George Luna, Harish Pavaskar, Troy Ciccoline, Just a Freakin', Chris Clemson, Ludger, Part 1 of 2, Kwok An Dang, Raiko, Render King, Alessandro Bonchio, Reshock, Rory H., Shamus Johnson, Terry Wayne Renson, Yassin Rupp, and Shibue Zhang. Once more, if you stuck with me until now, thank you so very much. This means a lot to me. I have a really foggy brain the last 3 weeks or so making tutorials is rather exhausting for me right now. So thank you for your ongoing support. Let's post an arrow emoticon, no matter what direction, to symbolize the vectors. And with this I say, have an awesome start into the week, a great time, and happy normal directing. Bye.